Guru Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Is the verse going up? So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 9, text 35. Sapadi sakti vacho nisamya madhye nija parayor balayor atam nivesha stitavati paras anikarya akshna ritavati partha sakevratir namastu. Sapadi sakti vacho nisamya madhye nija parayor balayor atam nivesha stitavati parasanikayur akshna vritavati partha sakevratir namastu. Sapadi saki vacho nisamya madhye nija parayor balayor tam nivesha stitavati parasanikayur akshna Ritavati Partha Sakevratir Namastu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kavayipu.
Sapadi sakhe vacho nisamya madhe nijaparayor balayor atham niveshya sthitavati parasainikayur akshna ratavati partha sakhe ratir mamastu.
Next.
Hare Krishna.
Sapadi.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Sorry about that. Sapadi sakhi vacho nishamya madhye nija parayo balayo ratham niveshya sitavati parasanikayur akshna hritavati partha sakhirati namastu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sapadi saki vacho nishamya madhye nija pararyar balayo ratam nivashya shtitavati parasanikayor akshna ritavati partha saki ratir mamastu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Haribo Prabhu.
Sapadi sakhi vacho nisamya madhye nija parayor balayo ratham niveshya stitavati parasainikayur akshana kritavati partha sakhe ratir mamastu. Hare Krishna.
Sapadi sakhi vacho nisam samadhyai nija parayo balayo ratam nivesya stitavati parasainikayur akshna ritavati partha sakherati mamastu.
Sapadi sakhi vacho nishamya madhye nija parayor balayor ratham niveshya stitavati parasainikayur akshna hritavati partha sakhe ratir mamastu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sapadi sakhi vacho nishamya madhye nija parayor balayor ratham niveshya stitavati paro sainikayor akshna ritavati partha sakhe ratir mamastu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sapati saki vacho nismaya matye nij parayor palayor tham niveshaya sthitavati parasainikāyor akshana kritavati paratha sakhe gatir mamastu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Word for word. Sapadi on the battlefield. Saki vacha. Command of the friend. Nisamya, after hearing. Madhye, in the midst. Nija, his own. Parayo, and the opposite party. Balayo, strength. Ratam, chariot. Niveshya, having entered. Stitavati, while staying there. Parasainika, of the soldiers on the opposite side. Ayu, duration of life. Akshna, by looking over. Kritavati, act of diminishing. Partha, O Arjuna, son of Pritha, Kunti. Sakhe, unto the friend. Rati, intimate relation. Mama, my. Astu, let there be. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In obedience to the command of his friend, the Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Purport. In the Bhagavad-Gita 1, first chapter, text 21 and 25, 225, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Shri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee, like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees. And Bhishma Dev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually, it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord. And whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. Om Agyanatimiranda Sajjanan Janan Salakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Mahashi Chaitanya Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swarupa Gadavma Yantadati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Go Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here in this amazing verse and purport, there are two major themes that arise, at least from what I can perceive. I'm sure some of you can see other things as well, but the first is about Krishna's relationship with Arjuna and with his pure devotees, and how the Lord sometimes will act as a servant or carry out the order of his devotees as Arjuna requested him. And Srila Prabhupada quoted or he referenced first chapter Bhagavad-Gita Text 21 to 25. And those verses, just in English, are very interesting. Arjuna said, "O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms." That's 22. And then 23, he says, "Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra." In 24, Sanjaya said, "O descendant of Bharat, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties." In the last verse, "In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, 'Just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here.'" So now, in order to really understand what's really taking place with regards to the Lord being the order carrier of his devotees, and for us to derive some benefit from that, because the practice of Krishna consciousness is not an academic endeavor. I've said it too many times, and Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that. It's not by academic endeavors. It's not a question of just learning a bunch of things, repeating many things in a nice fashion, but it's a question of how can we apply this information? How can we be affected in a Krishna conscious positive way by the information that we're being exposed to by the grace of Srila Prabhupada? Of course, we should always remember that without Srila Prabhupada's mercy in the form of his purports, his lectures, his letters, all these wonderful things, we would be lost in terms of understanding Bhagavad Gita. I mean, scholars much greater than us in universities all around the world are studying the Vedic literature. They know more about Sanskrit than any of us know. They know more about the Acharyas. They know all these things, but it's from an academic perspective. So it doesn't change their lifestyle. They remain who they are. And they say, "I know about Krishna. I know about Vedanta. I know about Sanatana Dharma. I know about Vaishnavas. I know about Lord Chaitanya." Fine. They have PhDs and all those things. So we give them all respect, but they have not changed their life. This information is meant to change our lives, change our lifestyle, cause us to change what we say and do. In order to do that, we have to go back a little bit in order to appreciate the picture of what's being described in this verse of Krishna being willing to be the servant of his devotee, Partha Sarathi. He's the chariot driver for Arjuna. Very interesting. But if we think about who Krishna really is, then it becomes more interesting. That's why he says, "Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vedi tattva." So one who understands, not just reads, but truly understands my appearance, my activities, my janma, my karma, he can also go back home, back to God at the end of his life. But that word understand, we have to try to understand. That means we have to hear from the right source, the right information. Timing is not, whatever time in our life that we hear this information, that's a good time. Maybe you heard it when you were 15, maybe you heard it when you were 12, maybe you heard it when you were 30, 40, 50, doesn't matter. So whenever we begin to hear this information, and more importantly, process it and employ it in our lives, So in the Bhagavatam, there are 4 primary verses, which are called the Chatusloki, which helps us to understand Krishna, excuse me, how great he really is. Then we look at these particular activities like Krishna being the chariot driver. Then it begins to affect us. Because if we just see Krishna and we say the word Lord Krishna, we say Supreme Personality of Godhead, beautiful phrases, so wonderful phrases. But then if we're not constantly trying to understand who he is, the extent of his power, which we can never understand. Even Krishna is amazed by his own power. It keeps expanding. There's a great amount of joy in Krishna because everything that manifests, it increases more and more and more. In the spiritual world, Krishna's joy, his bliss, his ananda keeps expanding. Once he understands a certain amount about himself, it expands more. He becomes more excited. He discovers more wonderful things. So in the beginning, in the Bhagavatam, when Lord Brahma first appeared from the navel in the lotus flower of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, sitting atop that lotus flower, he began his searching journey. He only saw the lotus and then he saw the stem. There was nothing else to see. Nothing else had been created. You have to imagine, nothing else had been created because he's a creator, God. He's the engineer of the universe. All the materials, well, let's get to that in a second. So nothing was there for him. Climbs down the lotus stem and he sees water at the bottom of the universe. And he hears the sound tapa. He begins his practice of tapasya. And by that tapasya, he pleased the Lord. And then the Lord revealed everything to him. So this Chatur Sloki begins, the 4 verses, only one we'll talk about for just a minute, just to give some perspective. And that's 2:933. Ahame vasyam e vagbre. Nanyat yat sarasat param. Pascharaham yat etachcha. Yo vasishita soshma aham. Now he's telling Brahma, Lord Krishna is telling Brahma, because Brahma, he didn't know. He didn't understand all these things. So the Lord is saying, Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who is existing before the creation. So that's the first point of the first verse in the Chatur Sloki. Krishna is saying, I existed before the creation, which means the creation is something that comes later. And then Srila Prabhupada would sometimes reference the Bible, and he would quote the Bible saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made like that. So Srila Prabhupada is comparing sometimes by saying, Krishna is saying, it was I existed in the beginning. I recently quoted this verse to someone who's not Krishna conscious, a person that I'm doing some philosophical activities with. So I quoted this verse and they were so fascinated. And they immediately thought of the reference in the Bible, how it sounded similar to that. So understanding Krishna being before the creation. Next, he said, before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. So you have to visualize, there's nothing but Krishna. So Brahma's there and there's nothing but Krishna. Nor was there the material nature. This material energy of the Lord, composed of the 3 modes of material nature, was not there. This is the cause of the creation. That which you see now is also I. So whatever Brahma is seeing now with his 4 heads, that's also Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. So that's the context. Before the creation, whatever you're going to use for creation, at the end, that's all me. And here I am driving the chariot for Arjuna. That's the interesting part. The Supreme Lord, who is everything, no truth superior to him, no truth superior to him. Now he's driving the chariot. I believe that story that Srila Prabhupada always reveals or talks about of the South Indian Brahmin who could not read. He was illiterate. But his Guru Maharaj told him to read Bhagavad-Gita 18 chapters every day. What an instruction. Sometimes a guru gives an instruction which is way beyond the capacity of the devotee. So when I got initiated in Chicago in 1974, one of my godbrothers, it was so funny, very funny story. So everyone's getting their name. I received my name. In fact, I thought my name was Balabhadra, not Bhattacharya, Balabhadra, something else. I had a different thing in my mind, you know. I didn't know because I had never heard the name Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So anyway, we're getting our names, getting our beads. So this one godbrother, Prabhupada said to him, your name will be Ekadasi. And the room was like, wow, Haribol. And then Prabhupada said, you can do every day? You can do Ekadasi every day? The boy was shocked. He was like nervous. Oh my God. And Prabhupada said, I'm just joking. No problem. You know? So sometimes the spiritual master will ask you to do something which is beyond your capacity. Like Prabhupada sent his disciples to preach in so many places. They had no experience, no knowledge, no understanding, but had faith in Prabhupada. Therefore, they were successful. So when this South Indian Brahmin was ordered by his Guru Maharaj to do it, he didn't hesitate. He did it. Did what? But he couldn't read. So he was trying. And Srila Prabhupada humorously says, he was making some sound like just what? He didn't know how to read. Even Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was similarly illiterate. So this Brahmin Lord, everyone was making fun of him because most people are not that, very intelligent to understand the qualities of a pure devotee. They don't see it. They can't understand it. So they were making fun. So the Brahmin was accustomed to that. So when Lord Chaitanya came, saw the Brahmin reading, and he said, oh, Brahma, you're reading so nice. But he understood that Lord Chaitanya was not criticizing him. He understood. He said, no, but I don't know how to read. You don't know how to read. Then how are you reading? And I see that you're crying. What is going on? So the Brahmin explained that when I meditate on this picture of Krishna, Parthasarathi, driving the chariot of Arjuna, my heart becomes broken. I come to tears. Why? Because he understood. He put it in the right context. When we're thinking of Krishna, how do we think of Krishna? We see his name every day. We chant his name every day. We read the books and all these stories about Krishna. But how are we understanding him? It's not enough just to read about him. It is good to read about him. It is good to hear about him. But we're meant to get some understanding. And how do you get that understanding? Jnana, Vijnana. Vijnana is so extremely important, critically important to our spiritual advancement, cannot be overemphasized and should not be underestimated. So amazing. What does that mean? Knowledge by practical application. Now, we can't do everything that we read about. Some things are just beyond our capabilities. Certain things about Krishna consciousness are really, you have to wait until you come to that level. But many things we can do. Like it says, Mahajano Yanigata Sapanta, follow in the footsteps of the Mahajanas. Like Prahlad Maharaj. We can follow in his footsteps. What are the footsteps of Prahlad? What's the example that Prahlad set for us? Have faith that God is everywhere. It's not so complicated. So his father asked him, okay, boy, you say God is everywhere. Is he in that pillar? Now, Prahlad had never seen Lord Nrsingadev before. He'd never seen Lord Nrsingadev before. What to speak of being in that pillar, that column. But Prahlad knew the Lord is everywhere. You say your God is everywhere. You say it. Do you believe it? Yes, I believe it. Yes, he's in that pillar. And then Ranyakasipu said, okay, then I'll kill him. And then we know the story. Hits the column, Nrsingadev comes out. No one had ever seen Nrsingadev before. Unbelievable. But Prahlad had absolute faith. Dhruva Maharaj, that's a nice example also. He followed the example of both his mothers. Even the mother who was against him, she actually told him the same thing about going to worship the Lord. So he followed those, and then he met Narada Muni, but he was resisting Narada Muni's instructions in the beginning. Narada told him to go home and come back because you're too young. He said, no, give me some other instruction. So finally, he accepted the instruction of Narada Muni. And then by following the instruction of Narada Muni, he made so much progress. So we see that example throughout the Vaishnava history, more specifically Srila Prabhupada, who was not physically qualified to get on that boat to come to America. He was 69 years old, became 70, 2 heart attacks, so many problems. Prabhupada had so many physical problems, but he had that instruction from his guru to take Krishna consciousness. So he had faith in his spiritual master. One who has faith in the spiritual master and Krishna and Shastra, they make advancement in spiritual life. That is all that's required. So Srila Prabhupada showed us by his example, practically applying this philosophy. So for us to understand Krishna, we have to practically apply the philosophy, jnana, vijnana. Then we can begin to understand. How do we understand? That's a big, not a mystery, but it's a big question. How do we understand? Do I just read myself to glory? I can just read, and then become self-realized? No. It's wonderful. We should do it as much as we can. But it still depends on the mercy of the Lord. We should never forget that. I was thinking this morning, just a little thought came to my mind. Constant inner dialogue, meditating on Lord Krishna. Like if people have this inner dialogue, sometimes it's very negative. They think about all kinds of crazy things, and it's constantly going on throughout the day. We should not be like that. Our inner dialogue should be always about Krishna, spiritual master, Vedic culture, our philosophy should just be reverberating in our minds constantly. And that's what Krishna says, Manmana manabad bhakto, Manmana bhavamad bhakto. Engage your mind, always in thinking of me. Let's take that's just that one part. Engage your mind, manmana, always in thinking of me. I love what it says in the Gurvastikam prayers. Mahaprabhu kirtananita gita vaditramadjam manasodasena. The spiritual master is relishing in his mind the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna and the Vaishnavas and all the beautiful pastimes. Replacing in our minds are filled up, sometimes Prabhupada would say, with cow dung, like cow stew. So much nonsense in our mind. So we replace that with Krishna consciousness. And we can accelerate it, or we can cause it to develop more by realizing the glories of the Lord. One who understands my appearance and activities, like that. So here we're saying the Lord is everything. So if he is doing this humble service of driving the chariot for Arjuna, how wonderful is that one activity? That's why Bhishma is referring to it. It's just unbelievably wonderful that Krishna would do that. It also reveals another dynamic, which means the joy, the pleasure of service. Even the Lord enjoys doing it. The Lord enjoys serving. He came as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not really as Krishna, but he came to participate or inaugurate the Sankirtan movement so he could relish the nectar of going out, chanting, preaching, facing difficulties. How can you imagine the Lord facing difficulties? But even his students, the Lord Chaitanya's students, were not very respectful to him at one point. So the Lord also subjected himself to all of that. Why? So he could show us by his example how we should live our lives so that we can take this knowledge and apply it to our lives. Starting with the mood of service, our eternal position is as a servant. Jivera Subhaya Krishna Nityadas. Our eternal position is as a servant. But that's not a negative thing, because even the Lord himself, Parthasarthi, is acting as a servant. Arjuna tells him, drive my chariot. In other words, like an Uber driver comes and you say, drive me to the airport, drive me to the store, drive me to my friend's house. It's a similar thing. Drive my chariot between the two armies. And Krishna goes, okay, let's go. And then Prabhupada says he stayed there to see all these things. And then Krishna's describing. We know the whole scenario in the first chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, but we sometimes don't remember this first sloka from the Chatur Sloki that Krishna's saying in the beginning was only I. And everything you see is only I. And at the end will be me, nothing. I am everything. So when we think of Krishna like that, the question becomes, should it not change our behavior? We were discussing this the other day in another class, how devotees enter the temple. So if you enter the temple and you're not, as I said earlier, you don't have that constant inner dialogue going, which means I'm at the temple, you're thinking like that. I'm seeing the Lord, the deity, it's non-different from Krishna, just constantly going in your mind. And you know what actually helps that? As I was saying about reading, if we read constantly the glories of the Lord and the instructions given by Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas as he reveals to us, then those are the thoughts that we're going to have. It's going to replace all that nonsense, noise, you call that white noise or whatever goes in the back of our mind. So we'll be thinking of Krishna. So when we enter the temple, thinking of things like this first verse from Chatur Sloki, and we're looking at the deity, we won't just, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just like a self-analysis. I know how my mind becomes sometimes. Forgetting who this is on the altar, the Archa Vigraha of the Lord, none different from the Lord. Which Lord? Well, like the one that Bhishma is describing in the verse, right? It's the infallible Lord who's driving the chariot of Arjuna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there he is on the altar. And I, by some mercy, Brahmanda Brahmite Kom Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata. By some mercy, I'm able to stand in front of Shishi Radha Sarad Bihari when maybe I would be standing somewhere else doing some nonsense, going out to some place to eat something or drink something or just be with some friends, watching a football game, whatever. By some mercy, I'm allowed to be in that place, in that temple, at that time, in front of the Lord. How special is that? So then when I come before the Lord, how should I act? How should I even walk? Just imagine, how should you walk when you walk inside the temple? Probably never think about that very much. But we should, because I love this in Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 2, text 54. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk?" It just fascinates me. How does he walk? People just walk. No, you don't just walk. And it reminds me of a small little pastime as a brahmachari in Atlanta temple. And Gita Mataji, she knows, because our temple room is like this. And then Prabhupada is there. We have the same Vyasasan where he sat when he came. And upstairs, there's a little room above Prabhupada. So 1, 2, 3 devotees used to sleep in that room. And I actually started a little video production for Mukunda Maharaj in that little room. But we were always conscious that we were above Prabhupada. So those devotees who slept in that room, when they got up, they would tiptoe, like they say, tiptoe. They walked so softly. Why? So that Prabhupada would not be disturbed. But it's just a deity. It's just a statue. No, it's Prabhupada. And then there's a hallway that goes along that area, which is above the temple room. So our temple president shouted at us one day, "Stop running and pounding upstairs. Krishna's downstairs." So our mind became constantly, as we walked, not to disturb the deities downstairs. Even in Mayapur, the first building they had, that 4-story building, I think it's still there, sure. So when I first went to Mayapur in 1976, it was only that 4-story building. Not even the long building was ready, just a 4-story building. But the unique thing was that the brahmachari bathroom was above the altar. Radha Madhava was there, Radha Madhava and Lord Chaitanya. So in the bathroom shower, they put these domes over where the deities were. So we could be conscious as we're showering, going to the bathroom, Krishna's there. How does he walk? How does he speak? How does he sit? One who's merged in transcendence. You have to be merged in transcendence, absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And then our activities will change. So in that spirit, I just want to share something that we were discussing in a class the other day on Bhagavad-Gita, that ties into this, at least in my mind, and helps us to begin to understand how Krishna does what he does, what's happening in our own lives. It's from Bhagavad-Gita 11th chapter, text 34. Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and the other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight, and you will vanquish your enemies in battle. So Prabhupada says something so unique in the purport. Really, it's just one word, English word, not even Sanskrit word, one word, which opens up a whole realm of possibilities and thought. The word every. Okay, keep that word in your mind. Every. And the next word, plan. P-L-A-N. Every plan is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that stopped us in our tracks. Wait a minute. So some devotees said, but what about this? And what about, I said, stop it. Read what Prabhupada said. Every plan. You mean every plan that everybody makes? Every plan. He didn't say every plan of the devotees, every plan of the Pandavas, every plan of the Vaishnavas, every plan of the demigods. He said every plan is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he is so kind and merciful to his devotees that he wants to give the credit to his devotees to carry out his plan according to his desire. Life should therefore move in such a way that everyone acts in Krishna consciousness and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the spiritual master. The plans of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are understood by his mercy. And the plans of the devotees are as good as his plans. One should follow such plans and be victorious in the struggle for existence. So this is saying, from my limited little understanding, is that Krishna is causing everything. Maya yakshena prakritiya suyate sacharacharam. Material nature works under his control. Everything is under his control. Everything is him. Everything is him. Beginning, middle, end. Everything is him. Everything is his plan. But what about, you can be, just say, what about Mr. Putin in Russia? He's got plans. You mean that's Krishna's plan? Prabhupada said, every plan. Where does the plan come from? It comes from your mind. And then your intelligence is there to guide you. But if your intelligence is not clear, if it's cloudy by material activities, then you won't be able to hear the super soul who's trying to guide you to follow his plan. But the fact remains, every plan is, as Prabhupada says, every plan is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But see, we don't understand his plan. I can venture to say that but Srila Prabhupada didn't totally understand Krishna's plan before he left India. I was telling a devotee yesterday, Prabhupada's plan was Jhansi, India. That was his first plan. He tried everything to make that a success. It didn't work because it wasn't Krishna's plan. And Prabhupada was a pure devotee, but it wasn't Krishna's plan. And then Krishna got him on the boat, and he traveled, and he came to the West, and he stayed with this Dr. Mishra. Still not Krishna's plan. Finally, he ended up in the Bowery, living there, and he's starting preaching. He's feeling some enthusiasm. Then the hippie chases him out. Still, that's not Krishna's plan. Krishna's plan really started to unfold on 26 2nd Avenue, and when Prabhupada went out chanting on Harinam, then it manifested. Then Prabhupada could see this is what Krishna wanted. And Prabhupada was frustrated many times. Things were not happening. Problems were going on. But he had faith in the words of his guru. And because of that, Krishna began to reveal his plans to Srila Prabhupada. And it says here, life should therefore move in such a way that everyone acts in Krishna consciousness and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the spiritual master. The plans of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are understood by his mercy, Dadami Buddhi Yogam, by the mercy of the Lord. So that's what I wanted to share with us today. Maybe if there's a couple of additional thoughts or questions, but we cannot understand the plans of the Lord without his mercy. And therefore we should do what Rupa Goswami says, be enthusiastic, but be patient. Because we don't know. The Lord's revealing his plan based on us. It's not the things around us or the people around us. It's us. If we become more Krishna conscious, then we can begin to understand the plans of the Lord, how he does what he does. Like in this whole scenario that's being described in the verse today, in the purport, how the person's, the Lord being the order carrier of Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and at the end, the Lord is not partial. Everything he does is good, because everyone on that battlefield who was in the presence of the Lord, they were blessed by the Lord and they got liberation, different forms of liberation. That's by the mercy of the Lord. But how could Arjuna understand that plan? And Krishna's telling him, just follow what I'm asking you, and then the plan will be revealed. At the end, he says, Sarvadhamma Prichajya Mame Kam Saranam. Just surrender unto me. Don't even think, don't speculate, just surrender unto me. And then Krishna revealed everything to Arjuna. So therefore, Krishna's plan supersedes all other plans, but all plans come from Krishna. So we should have faith in him and make progress in spiritual life. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or comments.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Gokulananda Priya Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very inspiring class.
Thank you.
I really like all the points you made. One thing, I have a question about Krishna and the order supplier.
Yes.
But, as neophyte devotees like myself, and we have to fully surrender to Krishna, and Krishna is everything for us, that we're aspiring to be there. But if we have some problem or something, if you tell Krishna, that means we are ordering Krishna?
That's a great question. No, you share your heart with Krishna. I remember His Holiness Hridaya Nanda Maharaj one time in Atlanta. He was saying, you can talk to Krishna. Why not? He's in your heart. And the Nectar Devotion says one should offer notable prayers in front of the deities. When you go before the deities, you offer prayers. I have a prayer that I've said for probably 40 years now. It's a prayer from my own heart. And when I go before the deities, I say my prayer. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's my prayer. And I say it to the deities every time I see them. And I'm basically asking them for their mercy to please guide me, and thanking them for allowing me to serve, to be in their service in the Sankirtan movement. So you can say to Krishna, but don't ask Krishna to give you a new car. Krishna, please give me a new car. Or Krishna, please, we always pray for our children to be safe and our children to get a good education, all those kinds of things. Should you offer those kinds of prayers? I don't want to tell you no, because Shastra says, Akarma, Savakama, Va, Moksha Kama, Udhadaditi, Braina Bhakti Yogena, Yajeta Purusampara. Whether you have all desires or no desires, you come to the lotus feet of the Lord. Because His devotional service, all desires can be fulfilled, whether they're spiritual or material. That's why Prabhupada says, just take shelter of Krishna. So Mataji is not ordering Krishna, because we can't really order him unless we really are advanced like Arjuna. But we can humbly place our situation at Krishna's lotus feet. And then the way you should say it at the end of what you say is like when Srila Prabhupada was sick in 1974, I believe it was 74. And they sent a message saying the prayer to Krishna for Srila Prabhupada was, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please save Srila Prabhupada. We didn't say, Krishna, save Prabhupada. My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please save Prabhupada. My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please allow me to whatever it is that you're thinking. Something like that. Is that okay, Mataji? Gokulananda Priya?
Yeah, because, we can't help just asking Krishna for to favor us. So there's a way to do it. That's why we say, if you so desire.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's better to ask Krishna and have faith that Krishna can fulfill your desires than to seek that outside Krishna consciousness. Because here's the benefit. And this is how Queen Kunti places it. She says, let the suffering happen again and again and again. Then she qualifies that by saying, because by suffering, I'm forced to remember you. And by remembering you, I no longer have to see birth and death. So by you remembering Krishna, when you're making these, desires or asking him for this or that, the benefit is you're thinking of Krishna. That's the main point. You're thinking of Krishna, even though you're asking for something material. It's not the best arrangement. What is it called? Sakama devotees who have some desire. But a kama sarva kama, doesn't matter either way. You just think of Krishna. So Mataji, the main point is to remember is that in whatever it is, always remember Krishna, no matter what, no matter how attached you might be or I might be, just remember Krishna. Anyone else?
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. So ready.
But like you said, these degrees and education, college education or something, that won't give this much knowledge. Like we're having this as devotee association and going through these things. I'm not that educated, highly educated, but I just want to see all this. And it's very good. And Krishna's glance itself, he's blessing Duryodhana and other enemies party. See, that was a really interesting thing. Today I learned this one. And we know only Kurukshetra war, and that's all. We know Pandavas and Kauravas doing the war. But the way, like Arjuna was asking, I don't want to kill them. But why Krishna was saying that, no, they're already been killed.
Mm.
But that was the thing. I never understood that, like his glance made them. And when they saw Krishna present there, that itself is blessing for them too. Like Bhishma Deva was asking for that at the end.
Very nice. Very nice.
So really.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go. So, anyone, Sita, are you there? You're moderating right now?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji. Haribol.
Very Haribol, very nice class.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. And I just want to clear one thing. It's about our plan. When we follow Krishna's philosophy, our mind gets purified. It removes the cloud in our mind.
Yes.
And then Krishna gives us intelligence and reveals our plan. Is it correct? I'm saying correctly? Or?
Oh, yeah. Very nice. And you can remember Bhagavad-Gita chapter 10, text 10. Te sam satadayuktanam bhajitam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamu puyantite. So that's like one of the most important verses, at least in my life. It shows me how to get Krishna's blessing in the form of understanding. Te sam satata, engaging satata, te sam satata yukta, always engage in my service, not just doing it, but bhajitam priti purvakam, with love. So that love means attention. When you cook for Krishna, full attention. When you clean for Krishna, full attention. When you're coming to the temple, full attention. When you're chanting japa, full attention with love. Love means you pay attention to the person you say you love. You remember birthdays. You remember do this, you do that. You apply that to Krishna consciousness. Dadami buddhi yoga. I give you the understanding. But I'm so fallen, my Lord. Like Mataji is saying, Vinjavali, I don't have much education, my Lord. I don't have any money, my Lord. Don't worry about it. You just serve me with love. I will give you the understanding. Even if you're not smart, intelligent like me, I don't feel myself very intelligent. Doesn't matter. I'll give you the understanding. How? I'm in your heart, okay? I'm in your heart. Don't worry about it. I know what you want. Before you want it, I know what you want. So you just serve me with love. I'll take care of the rest. That to me, that gives me hope every time I think about it, because I get so frustrated. But when I think of those two verses, especially 10, was it 10:10 and 15:15? Kind of easy to remember. 10:10, 15:15. I just put those two like that, and I feel so much better. So Thank you for
Thank you.
reminding us of that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nicely you said. Thank you. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
So who's our host? Hi, Bosita.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
So my
Yeah.
humble obeisances.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Yashua Prabhupada. Yeah, Mother Shubhara, they had to leave, so she asked me if I could end the class.
No problem.
So, if anyone has any question, please just unmute and say. Otherwise, I guess we'll pause for a minute and see if somebody has anything. Okay, I guess. Thank you very much, Balabhadra Prabhu, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us again. Tonight, we have shloka recitation at 6:40, and at 7 o'clock, we do a books. We are reading the book.
I will build a temple.
Yes, I'll build you a temple.
Mm.
So please join us. And for Bhagavatam class, again, tomorrow morning at 7:50 a.m. Everyone have a very wonderful, blissful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari bol.
Kripa sindho bhi evacha patitanam pavana.
Vaishnava.